Have you ever felt the tug of curiosity when your birthday rolls around, wondering if the day you entered this world carried more meaning than meets the eye? To many of us, a birth date is simply a line on a calendar, a date we celebrate with cake and candles. But Carl Jung saw something deeper. He believed that the month in which we're born resonates with symbolic forces woven into the very fabric of nature and psyche. These forces shape our emotional currents, our hidden potentials, and even the lessons life asks us to learn. Imagine for a moment that the calendar isn't just a tool for marking days, but a map of archetypal energies. In ancient times, across diverse cultures, people noticed patterns, how winter's hush stirred introspection, how spring's first blooms awakened hope, how autumn's breath spoke of harvests both literal and metaphorical. Long before Jung gave voice to the collective unconscious, scholars and mystics sensed that one's birth season might imprint something essential on identity. Our modern world sometimes dismisses such ideas as quaint superstition or astrology for amusement. Jung, however, found in these rhythms a mirror, a way to glimpse the unconscious patterns already at play within each of us. Why should we care? Because when we pause to reflect on the month that holds our first breath, we open a doorway. That doorway isn't a fortune-telling gimmick. It's an invitation to peer into the symbolic currents that circled around us from the very beginning. Consider, for instance, Leonardo da Vinci, born in April, a month charged with burgeoning life and bold beginnings. His career as an artist and inventor seemed to embody the initiator's drive. He constantly moved from one project to the next, unafraid to challenge accepted limits. Or think of Maya Angelou, who arrived in April as well. Her fearless voice and pioneering spirit echo the archetype of the warrior who both initiates and transforms. By contrast, imagine someone born in late December. They entered the world at a time when the year's harvest is done, when long nights invite reflection on what has been and what could come. Their soul's first breath was tinged by introspection and a longing for deeper meaning. December-born individuals often carry within them a blend of philosophy and optimism, looking back with wisdom while gazing ahead with hope. If you value a journey that goes beyond surface-level how-to advice, then consider this your invitation to subscribe to our channel. We strive to nurture a space where genuine self-discovery, rooted in Jungian thought, reigns supreme. Here we won't box you into simplistic labels. Instead, we'll guide you to see the symbolic tapestry that has been unfolding since the moment you arrived. So take a slow breath and allow yourself to settle into this idea. Your birth month isn't merely a neutral fact. It is a symbolic imprint, a resonance of nature's own archetypal song at that precise instant when you appeared. From the still hush of January's frost to the radiant crescendo of July's high sun, each month offers a distinct psychological tone. By recognizing that tone, we can better understand our strengths, acknowledge the shadows we're destined to confront, and begin a dialogue with the currents flowing beneath the surface of consciousness. In this first segment, we've laid the groundwork that your birth month matters, not because an unseen hand controls your fate, but because the rhythms of earth, sky, and psyche converge at the moment of your birth. When you're ready, let me know, and I will guide you through Jung's essential concepts. Archetypes, nature's cycles, and the symbolic map that frames our unfolding story. Would you like me to continue? Let us now turn to the bedrock of Jung's vision, the notion that beneath our conscious lives lies a vast interconnected realm of archetypes. Timeless patterns of thought, emotion, and action that transcend any one culture or era. In his book, Man and His Symbols, Jung describes these archetypes as primordial images that have always existed in the collective unconscious, stirring in us a shared resonance with myths, legends, and even seasonal shifts in nature. Rather than seeing months as arbitrary slices of time, Jung observed that each season, and by extension, each month, mirrors a distinct archetypal energy, echoing the cycles of birth, growth, decline, and renewal. Take, for instance, the archetype often labeled the hero, which appears across civilizations as the one who answers a call to adventure. In Jungian terms, this pattern is alive in anyone who steps forward to face a challenge, whether slaying literal dragons or wrestling with deep personal transformation. But the hero does not stand alone alongside. It exists, the shadow, that hidden reservoir of qualities we deem unacceptable. When we ignore our shadow, it gains power and eventually overwhelms us. Jung's memories, dreams. Reflections vividly illustrates how confronting one's shadow, much like confronting the dark chill of winter, is essential before we can step into the light and fully claim our potential. If each archetype is a thread in a tapestry, then nature's seasons form the loom on which that tapestry unfurls. Picture late winter January in the Northern Hemisphere when the world seems suspended between collapse and resurgence. There is a stillness that compels inward reflection. The sap under the bark of trees may be frozen, but beneath that crust of frost, life is gathering strength. Jung saw January as aligned with the archetype of the sage or the elder, a time for pausing and summoning quiet wisdom. In days past, many cultures practiced rites of introspection and counsel around the new year, recognizing that before any great endeavor, the spirit requires a foundation of inner calm. When you were born in the first weeks of the year, you may sense an echo of this silent contemplative pulse, an inclination to observe, to weigh life's currents patiently, even if from the outside you appear reserved. By contrast, let your mind drift to midsummer July or August, when the sun stands high and life pulses with abundance. Crops reach their zenith and communities gather for festivals. Jung likened this fullness to the archetype of the sovereign, or the leader, manifesting confidence, generosity, and a natural command of the stage. Those born in these seasons often radiate a similar strength, a charisma that draws others in. Yet with such brightness can come the shadow of pride or the temptation to dominate. Just as a midsummer day can tip suddenly into sweltering heat, so too can unchecked leadership become overbearing. Jung's writings remind us that self-knowledge is not merely a way to harness our gifts, but to temper them with humility. Between these extremes lie the months that mark turning points, March and September. In March, as the last snows thaw, the first green tips of crocus petals emerge. The air itself seems charged with possibility, and everywhere we see evidence of rebirth. Jung called this the archetype of the reborn or the awakener. Think of a person who repeatedly reinvents themselves, embracing new careers, new identities, as if their default setting is transformation. Their inner life resonates with the same volatility of a landscape shedding winter's grip. Such individuals often possess uncanny intuition, sensing shifts in mood or environment before others even notice. Yet they also run the risk of losing stable footing, so the task for March-born souls is to balance their fluid creativity with grounded practices, perhaps meditation or time spent in nature, to prevent their boundless energy from becoming chaotic. Myths from many traditions reinforce this pattern. In ancient Greece, Dionysus, the god of life's cycle of death and rebirth, was honored in springtime rituals that mirrored the thawing earth. In Jung's view, when we acknowledge the rebirth archetype within ourselves, whether through spring or through personal crises, we align with a universal rhythm. Symbolically, to be born in a turning month is to carry that rhythm in your blood. Now consider September, a month painted in golds and russets. Harvest is underway, and a mood of assessment settles in. Jung associated this period with the archetype of the analyst or the perfectionist, someone called to bring structure out of chaos. In a world that feels constantly in flux, these individuals anchor themselves by observing details, organizing data, and refining systems. If you were born in September, you may be that friend who notices the smallest discrepancy in a spreadsheet, or who finds solace in labeling and categorizing. Your mind is oriented toward clarity, striving to build order. Yet there is a pitfall. Perfectionism can become a prison. Jung's warning was that the analyst must learn to welcome imperfection as part of humanity's tapestry, allowing a space where creativity can flourish beyond rigid boundaries. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung recounts his own struggles with perfection, exploring how his methodical approach to psychoanalysis sometimes stifled his spontaneity. The remedy he discovered lay in embracing both the structure of September and the unbounded spirit of March, balancing order with renewal. A crucial point Jung made is this time itself has a story, a mood, a narrative arc. If we are born at a particular moment in that unfolding drama, we step into a symbolic scene that resonates long after our first cries. This symbolic imprint is not a deterministic stamp forcing us down a fixed path. Rather, it is a background melody, an invitation to hear certain notes more clearly. Once we recognize that melody, we gain a symbolic map which shows us where to look for both our strengths and our shadows. In Man and His Symbols, Jung writes that symbols do not dictate action, they point to potential. They say, here is what calls to you. How we respond remains our choice. To bring this into sharper relief, let us briefly explore one more example. The archetype of the seeker, often linked to summer's cusp around June. When school ends and vacations begin, there is a restlessness in the air, a thirst for exploration. People born in June frequently embody that questing spirit. They ask questions, pursue new experiences, and connect disparate ideas. Jung spoke of the seeker as someone drawn to both knowledge and human connection, but he also cautioned that too many paths can lead to fragmentation, so the seeker's work is to find a center amidst the swirl of options. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, do you notice subtle shifts in your moods when spring arrives? Do you feel a grounding steadiness when the leaves turn? Those shifts are not mere coincidences. They are reminders that your psyche participates in the larger story of nature. By reflecting on how archetypal forces have influenced thinkers from Odysseus to modern-day innovators, you allow yourself to step beyond a surface identity. Instead of saying, "I'm just a May baby who likes comfort," you begin to understand that there is an underlying builder energy, patient, tactile, attuned to beauty that calls you to create lasting forms in the world, even as you learn to release attachment when change calls. This is what Jung meant when he said, knowing your archetype is not about being boxed in. It is about recognizing the landscape within which you roam. As we move forward, keep in mind that each month is an invitation to dialogue with a particular facet of your psyche. You may sense more resonance with certain months than others, and that's natural. After all, each of us carries a unique constellation of archetypal energies, not just the one tied to our birth month. The work of individuation, as Jung called it, involves weaving together those threads into a cohesive whole. Before we delve into the detailed reflections on each month from January through June, take a moment to notice any stirring within you. Perhaps you already sense a familiar chord when you think of your birth month, an echo of a deeper pattern. Later, I'll share stories of people whose lives vividly illustrate these archetypes. But for now, hold that question: which archetypal energy calls to you most strongly? If you're ready, let me know, and we will embark on our month-by-month exploration, beginning with January's quiet sage and moving through the reborn fire of March, the builder's patience in May and beyond. Would you like me to continue? As winter's hush settles over the world, imagine a January dawn, where frost still clings to sleeping branches and a subdued light filters through bare trees. In those quiet hours when the air itself seems suspended between night and day, Jung's archetype of the sage quietly stirs. Picture someone born in January arriving into that stillness as the old year relinquishes its final breath. From their earliest days, they may carry a contemplative quality, an ability to sit with silence to listen when others are rushing to speak. Even as childhood friends, scurried to play, the January baby might linger by a window, tracing frost patterns on the glass, contemplating life's deeper questions before most have formed them. This sage energy brings a calm, almost regal wisdom. In practical terms, the January-born often find comfort in routines, waking before dawn to read or reflect, keeping journals where they carefully record thoughts and insights, or simply savoring moments of solitude. They excel at long-term planning. Whether it's mapping out a career path or setting grounded goals for relationships, they know that true growth often unfolds slowly, like the thawing of winter ice. Yet every strength bears its shadow. If the sage leans too far into introspection, they can risk detachment, becoming so absorbed in inner dialogues that joy and spontaneity slip away. The key for this archetype lies in balancing inner stillness with simple pleasures, a brief walk beneath crisp skies, a warm cup of tea in the company of a close friend, or allowing themselves to laugh without immediately analyzing the meaning behind the laughter. As January's still heart gives rise to February's subtle shift, the landscape begins to change. Notice how in late winter the faintest hint of longer days can stir a restlessness in the soul. For those born in February, that restlessness often blossoms into a visionary fire. In Jung's terms, February resonates with the archetype of the revolutionary or the visionary one, who sees beyond the present and senses hidden possibilities. Imagine a February child born into an environment still draped in frost, yet somehow innately drawn toward creation and innovation. Even as the world outside remains muted, their inner world brims with color ideas and a longing to break free from conventional molds. This visionary spark manifests in many ways. Perhaps a February-born teenager becomes the friend who questions every rule, who sketches futuristic inventions during class, or who refuses to confine themselves to a single way of thinking. They might dive into poetry or abstract art, finding, in creative expression, a refuge from mundane expectations. Emotionally sensitive, they feel deeply even if they don't always show it, and they possess unusual empathy for others who feel out of step with mainstream currents. Yet this same visionary intensity can foster feelings of isolation. Living in a realm of ideals sometimes makes everyday reality seem dull or limiting. The challenge for the February soul is to tether their flights of imagination to concrete projects, perhaps coding a small app that brings one of their ideas to life, or volunteering for a cause aligned with their ideals, thereby anchoring that rebel spirit in tangible result. Then comes March, that luminous hinge between winter's final breath and spring's awakening. In the northern hemisphere, the snow softens and the first hints of green stir in sheltered corners. Jung named March's dominant archetype the reborn, or the awakener. To be born in March is to carry an innate promise of transformation. From their earliest days, March-born individuals often exhibit keen intuition, sensing shifts in mood or weather before anyone else notices. They might awaken in the night, drawn to stand at a window and listen for the rustle of unseen growth. In storytelling terms, they are the phoenix poised to rise from ashes long before the flames even appear. Emotionally, these souls are rivers of feeling. A March person may laugh with bright abandon one moment and weep with deep poignancy the next, each emotion arriving with a force that can feel almost overwhelming. This intensity is part blessing, part challenge. On one hand, it propels them toward creative pursuits that others shy from, painting with bold strokes, composing music that dives into shadow and light, or crafting stories that navigate the boundary between life and death. On the other hand, they must guard against becoming engulfed by their own inner tides. Losing boundaries with others or losing themselves in melancholic reverie are real risks. For this archetype, practices that ground the spirit, like tending a small garden, walking barefoot in earth, or dancing in sunlight, can channel that torrent of feeling into renewal. With March's fresh impulse, April stands as a call to action. As buds budge and petals unfurl, the world erupts in color and possibility. Jung envisioned April's archetype as the warrior, or the initiator, one who meets life head-on, wielding courage and personal will. Picture an April baby, fierce-eyed infants who seem to glare at life's challenges as though daring them to speak. By childhood, they might be the first on the soccer field, paddling upstream in a river, or standing up for a classmate who's being bullied. Their energy is direct and visceral. In adulthood, the April-born are often the first to volunteer for a leadership role, the co-worker who takes charge of a tough project, or the activist who organizes a rally. Their drive can galvanize others, inspiring collective action. But like any warrior, they must learn when to sheath the sword. Impatience and impulsiveness can lead to burnout or conflict. When that fire is balanced by moments of stillness, perhaps a silent retreat, mindful breathwork, or dedicating time to listen deeply to another's story, April's warrior can become not only a force for initiation, but also a beacon of compassion and wisdom. As April's heat matures into May's gentle warmth, the air grows fragrant with blossoms. In Jungian imagery, May is the builder or the lover of simplicity, a time of stability, patience, and sensual delight. A May child arrives into a world embroidered with color apple blossoms, tulips, and fields of lavender. From infancy, they may show a keen appreciation for beauty, arranging toys in perfect symmetry, humming lullabies in a deliberate, measured way, or gazing raptly at twisted vines overhead. In later years, they might find solace in crafts, gardening, cooking, sculpting, creating tangible forms that honor the texture of earth and life. The builder archetype is rooted in a deep connection to the senses. May-born individuals often have an exceptional palate for food, a gift for noticing subtle hues, or a knack for finding pleasure in domestic rituals. A morning ritual of strong coffee, the scent of fresh bread, or the softness of well-worn chairs. They excel at creating environments that nurture warm homes, thriving gardens, or supportive communities. Yet the same devotion to consistency can tip into rigidity. The builder can fear change so deeply that they cling to safety long after it ceases to serve. Their growth requires gently embracing impermanence, perhaps practicing periodic acts of letting go, like donating possessions to charity or intentionally trying new experiences outside their comfort zone. Finally, as spring's full flush seeds to early summer June, arrives with a spirit of curiosity and connection. Jung spoke of June's archetype as the seeker or the mediator, one drawn to understanding communication and bridging gaps. Picture a June-born child, eyes bright with wonder at every new friend, every new idea. In school, they might be the student who reads across genres, who joins debate clubs and art classes simultaneously, who wonders how science, literature, and music might all be interwoven. Socially, they thrive on dialogue, listening to a stranger's story in a cafe one moment and swapping top book recommendations the next. This seeker energy gifts individuals with adaptability and empathy. June souls can find themselves moving fluidly between diverse social circles or gathering people around important conversations, be it in a study group, a community workshop, or a living room salon. Their greatest gifts lie in synthesizing disparate perspectives, building understanding where others might see only conflict. Yet with so many interests, they risk spreading themselves too thin, never quite finishing projects, always chasing the next horizon. To deepen their power, they might practice sustained focus, choosing a single line of study or a long-term creative project to see through completion, and balancing social engagement with periods of quiet reflection, allowing insights to settle. In weaving the tapestry from January through June, we see how each month's distinct archetypal energy unfurls like a season in the human psyche. The sage learns to blend wisdom with joy. The visionary grounds imagination in action. The reborn channels emotional intensity into renewal. The warrior tempers courage with compassion. The builder marries stability with openness to change, and the seeker transforms curiosity into centered purpose. Though we've spoken of each archetype as if it stands alone, remember that within each of us lives a mosaic of these patterns. Your birth month's dominant archetype may resonate most strongly, but the other 5 energies also whisper beneath your skin, shaping choices, relationships, and dreams. As you reflect on these 6 archetypes, notice any stirrings within, perhaps a sense of kinship with January's reflective calm or an echo of June's restless inquiry. Let these impressions guide you in discerning where your own soul's path seeks to expand. In our next section, we will turn to the months of July through December, exploring how emotional depth, leadership, perfection, harmony, transformation, and wisdom take shape in the latter half of the year. But take a moment now, breathe deeply. Honor the archetypal song that first greeted you at your birth, and consider how these energies have danced through your life. If you feel drawn to continue, let me know, and together we will step into July's warm embrace. As summer's warmth ripens into high heat, July arrives like a gentle reminder of home's embrace. Imagine a July morning at dawn. The sky is already pale gold. Hummingbirds dart from flower to flower, and the scent of hibiscus drifts on a soft breeze. In this atmosphere of abundance and familial gatherings, Jung's archetype of the nurturer emerges. Those born in July enter the world when hearts and hearths feel most centered on emotional bonds, when kitchens fill with laughter and porches welcome neighbors under lantern light. A July infant often seems to absorb that communal love from the very beginning. Eyes bright with empathy, as though they instinctively understand the unspoken rhythms that bind family and friends together. In childhood, a July-born might be the friend who sits by someone who feels unseen, offering comfort without hesitation. They are keenly attuned to subtle shifts in mood, detecting sorrow in a sibling's silence or conversely radiating joy in moments of reunion. Their emotional intelligence can be astonishing. They may learn to soothe a frightened pet or sense that grandma needs a hug before anyone else notices. As adults, these individuals often become anchors in their communities. Counselors who listen without judgment, mentors who foster growth anchors who steer others through storms of grief or doubt. Their greatest gift is an unwavering presence, simply being there without need for elaborate words. Yet the shadow side of the nurturer can emerge when boundaries blur. A July soul may instinctively prioritize others' needs to the detriment of their own well-being. They might forego rest so long as a friend remains in pain, forgetting that caretakers themselves need care. Over time, this self-neglect can manifest as exhaustion or quiet resentment, like the host of a dinner party who, after serving others, realizes they haven't sat down to eat. Jung would encourage a July-born to practice self-protection with as much fervor as they offer protection to others. Simple rituals, setting aside a half hour each morning for solitude or politely declining invitations when energy runs low, become acts of self-love. In this way, the nurturer honors both the hearth at the center of life and the delicate flame of their own spirit. As July's compassionate warmth fades into August's blazing sun, a dramatic shift unfolds. August is the season of fullness. Gardens cling to ripe tomatoes. Sunflowers tower skyward, and festivals celebrate harvests in midsummer glory. Jung this month embodies the archetype of the sovereign or the leader, an energy that carries both vision and command. If you were born in August, the world welcomed you at a moment when the dance of growth reaches its zenith, when the fields yield their bounty, and communities look toward the future together. A child born in early August may arrive with a powerful gaze, as though challenging the world to stand up and follow. By adolescence, these individuals often step naturally into leadership roles: student council, president, team captain, or the organizer of volunteer drives to feed the hungry. Their presence commands attention without effort. They speak with assurance that compels listeners to lean in. In boardrooms or creative teams, they gravitate toward positions where they can rally others behind a shared purpose, much like a conductor drawing harmony from diverse instruments. Yet pride and isolation can shadow the sovereign, as October's cooling winds will later remind us to balance vision with humility. August-born personalities must guard against believing that authority alone justifies their choices. In their quest to guide and protect, they can eclipse others' autonomy, inadvertently silencing voices that deserve to be heard. Jung likened true leadership not to ruling over subjects, but to serving as a steward, empowering the collective rather than dominating it. A simple practice such as pausing to invite feedback before making a decision or publicly acknowledging team contributions can transform raw charismatic force into inclusive stewardship. When the fire of August meets the cool water of empathy, the sovereign becomes not a solitary monarch, but a radiant beacon guiding all to their highest selves. As summer's blaze begins its inevitable wane, September arrives in a tapestry of gold and crimson. Leaves stir with the first cool breaths of autumn, and harvests stand neatly stacked in barns. In Jung's symbolic schema, September aligns with the archetype of the perfectionist or the analyst, those who find serenity in structure, clarity, and precision. A September-born person often enters the world amid this whispering transition from abundance to order, as if nature itself delegates them the task of making sense of complexity. From an early age, the September child might display an uncanny knack for details, noticing a misplaced puzzle piece, rewriting homework until each letter stands in perfect alignment, or cataloging their toy collection with meticulous care. As they grow, this drive toward order propels them into careers in research, engineering, finance, or any field where discernment and discipline are prized. They find solace in routines, from the exacting rituals of morning coffee measured to their favorite temperature to the habit of color-coding to-do lists that stretch across weeks. Yet the quest for perfection can become an albatross around the September soul's neck. Small mistakes, typos on a presentation. A missed call from a friend may trigger a cascade of self-criticism. The analyst's low tolerance for ambiguity can transform everyday uncertainties into paralyzing anxiety. Jung warned that the perfectionist must learn to embrace the fuzzy edges of life. Just as a sepia-toned photograph retains its charm, despite a few blurred lines, so too can a life rich in nuance defy the cold calculus of absolute correctness. By intentionally integrating acts of unplanned creativity, scribbling freehand in a journal, taking spontaneous road trips without itinerary, or volunteering in fields far outside their expertise, September-born individuals can soften the grip of rigidity and discover that beauty often thrives in imperfection. October's arrival brings another subtle shift. The air sharpens. Twilight lingers longer, and a quiet enchantment drapes the world in shades of amber and indigo. For Jung, October's archetype is the diplomat or the artist. Those who seek harmony within dualities, who see beauty in nuance, and who yearn to bridge divides. If you entered life in October, the cosmos greeted you at a moment when change unfolds best through balance, when each leaf's color shift symbolizes how opposing forces can unite in breathtaking display. A child of October may learn language intuitively, speaking in hues and metaphors before mastering arithmetic. Their earliest scribbles might resemble abstract art more than alphabet letters, hinting at an orientation toward aesthetics over convention. In friendships, they naturally play the role of peacemaker, listening equally to each side in a playground argument, tendering apologies before conflicts escalate. As adults, they excel in careers that demand nuanced diplomacy, interior design, music composition, or roles that require keen empathy, such as counseling or mediation. But harmony-seeking has its price. The October soul can become so fearful of conflict that they mute their own needs, glossing over truths to keep the peace. A customer service professional born on an October day may endure disrespect rather than speak up, or a creative collaborator might suppress a radical idea because it risks ruffling feathers. Jung would counsel these individuals to learn the art of constructive confrontation, embracing the truth that genuine harmony grows not from silence but from honest discourse. Simple practices: journaling about unspoken feelings, rehearsing difficult conversations with a trusted friend, or creating art that expresses shadow aspects help the diplomat build the courage to stand firm in their truth. In doing so, they weave a richer tapestry of harmony, one that includes the texture of conflict as well as resolution. As November's curtain of dusk settles, the world beckons us to plunge inward. Frost may lace window panes and birds begin their migrations, leaving the air tinged with both finality and anticipation. Jung identified November's archetype as the alchemist or the transformer, a figure drawn to mysteries below the surface, to processes of death and rebirth, and to the alchemy of turning shadow into light. If your story began in November, your soul's first breath resonated with the music of endings, giving way to new beginnings. In early childhood, a November-born might gaze long at the bare trees, sensing in their skeletal branches the silent poetry of change. They may develop an early fascination with storytelling that unravels hidden motives, thrillers, myths, or family legends passed down in hushed tones. As they navigate adolescence, their emotional compass can tilt toward the profound. They might journal about existential questions before most their age contemplate them or find solace in night-long conversations about life's mysteries. Entering adulthood, the alchemist archetype compels them toward fields of deep transformation, psychology, spiritual coaching, investigative journalism, or research into healing modalities. Their gifts lie in walking into darkness, whether that of another's grief or their own unhealed wounds, and returning with insights that illuminate paths to renewal. Yet confronting shadow carries risks. A November soul can be swallowed by grief obsession or cynicism if they don't cultivate anchored practices to emerge from darkness. Jung might recommend solitude in nature, walking among evergreen trees in early morning mist, allowing Earth's quiet resilience to restore faith. Rituals such as symbolically burning old fears or seeking community and support groups can also enact alchemical transformation. When they learn to trust the cycle of dissolution and rebirth, November-born individuals become powerful healers, proof that embracing death within makes possible a profound rebirth of spirit. Finally, December arrives with its own luminous paradox. The year ends in darkness, yet within that darkness flickers hope for renewal. Ancient festivals of light, Yule logs, Hanukkah candles, Christmas gatherings illuminate the deep interior landscape. Jung saw December aligned with the archetype of the visionary sage or the wise teacher, someone who holds a wide lens on life, integrating past lessons while envisioning future possibilities. If you entered life in December, your soul's opening moment was steeped in both reflection and hope, a balance of solemnity and expectation. A child born in December may develop early a sense of life's sacredness, noticing the hush that settles over a world blanketed in snow, or sensing the collective anticipation that builds toward holiday gatherings. By school age, they often gravitate toward philosophy, theology, or the study of great thinkers, asking questions about the meaning of existence, the dance of time, and the nature of the divine. In adulthood, these individuals can become teachers, writers, spiritual guides, or public intellectuals, roles that require both depth of insight and an ability to inspire. Their voices often carry a gentle gravitas, inviting listeners to contemplate their place in the larger web of life. Yet the sage's lofty vision can drift into disconnection if not grounded. December-born individuals sometimes lament that the world falls short of their ideals, retreating into solitary contemplation or feeling paralyzed by disillusionment. Jung would encourage them to translate their wisdom into real-life acts of service, mentoring a young student, volunteering in community projects, or simply sharing stories around a fire. By taking their celestial insights down to earth, they bridge the gap between vision and action. In so doing, they embody the final flourish of the year's archetypal journey, demonstrating that wisdom is not a passive corrector of errors, but a guiding light that ignites new possibilities. In weaving together the tapestry of months from July through December, we witness how emotional depth, leadership, discernment, harmony, transformation, and wisdom emerge in turn, each archetype offering both its gift and its shadow. The nurturer learns that compassion can bloom only when self-care is honored. The sovereign discovers that true power lies in humble service. The analyst sees that clarity shines most brightly when paired with mercy. The diplomat recognizes that authentic harmony grows from engaged courage. The alchemist transforms grief into compassion, and the sage translates lofty ideas into acts that buoy communities. Remember, though, that while each of us enters under the banner of a dominant monthly archetype, no one is bound by that archetype alone. Within you also dwell echoes of January's calm reflection, April's bold initiation, or June's questing curiosity, waiting for the right season in your life to bring them forward. Jung called this process individuation, the gradual integration of all archetypal energies into a cohesive whole. When we honor our birth month archetype, we recognize our soul's original imprint. When we welcome the archetypes of other months, we expand our capacity for growth and resilience. As you reflect on these latter 6 archetypes, notice which resonances stir in your own experience. Perhaps you recall feeling called to guide others during challenging times, or maybe you identify with the magnetic pull toward clarity and order. Let these impressions guide your self-inquiry. Where have you embodied these energies? Where have you resisted them? And what might happen if you invited one of these archetypes to lead for a season? When you're ready, let me know, and we will move to the final section, where we weave together the full arc of the year's symbolic map and explore how this knowledge can enrich your journey of self-discovery and transformation. As we now stand at the threshold of the calendar's final chapter, we see that the months from January through December form a symbolic circle, each offering a unique lens through which to view the human soul's journey. When you arrived in your particular month, you stepped into a living tapestry of archetypal energies that continue to echo through your life. But understanding those echoes is only the beginning. Real transformation arises when we bring that archetypal awareness into daily living, weaving it into the very choices we make and the relationships we hold dear. Think back to January's stillness. The sage laid the groundwork for reflection and discipline, teaching us that wisdom often sprouts from silence. As you moved into February's visionary fires, you glimpsed how imagination and rebellion can spark new directions. March beckoned you to shed old skin and embrace rebirth, while April called you to meet life head-on with courage. In May, the builder inspired you to create tangible beauty and nourish the senses. By June's turn, the seeker showed you how curiosity and connection can expand understanding. Then July's nurturing warmth taught the power of compassionate presence, and August's sovereign light invited you to lead with both confidence and humility. September's analytical gaze reminded you of the value of structure and its shadow of perfectionism. October's diplomatic grace encouraged you to forge harmony amid dualities. November's alchemical depth revealed how confronting shadow can yield powerful transformation. Finally, December's sage vision offered a glimpse of how wisdom grounded in hope can nurture entire communities. These archetypal energies do not stand as isolated statues to be admired from afar. Imagine instead that each month's pattern is like a melody woven into a grand symphony, sometimes bold, sometimes haunting, sometimes tender. And just as a symphony requires every instrument, every tonal shift to achieve its full beauty, so too does the human psyche thrive when all its archetypal facets are honored. The work of individuation, as Jung described, is precisely this learning to hear each archetypal voice within ourselves, recognize when it calls to the forefront, and integrate it into a harmonious whole. Perhaps you identify strongly with your birth month archetype feeling, January's reflective calm, or August's radiant leadership stirring in your bones. And yet, even if you feel wholly yourself in that one role, consider the possibility that the other archetypes are lying dormant, waiting for moments when their gifts can support you. The perfectionism of September may guide you when tasks demand precision. The alchemical insight of November may rescue you in moments of grief. When you welcome these other energies, you weave a richer, more resilient tapestry of being. So how can you put this symbolic map into practice? First, cultivate simple rituals of self-observation. For 1 week notice when a particular archetypal energy seems to dominate your mood or actions. If you find yourself drawn to long introspection and quiet journaling, might that reflect January's sage awakening within you? Or if you're organizing every detail of a project with laser focus, could that be September's analyst stepping forward? When you label these experiences with archetypal names, Sage Warrior Builder, you distance yourself from unconscious reactivity. You become an attentive witness to your own inner landscape, noticing patterns rather than identifying exclusively with them. Second, create small experiments that allow other archetypes to have the spotlight. If you are steeped in the builder's steady routine, may challenge yourself to initiate an impulsive adventure, perhaps a last-minute weekend trip or a creative project with no guarantee of outcome. Let the warrior or the reborn archetype play for a while, even if it feels uncomfortable. If you tend toward October's harmonizing diplomacy practice, holding strong boundaries in one conversation this week. When you give each archetype a chance to act, you develop flexibility and resilience. Third, weave archetypal awareness into your relationships. Notice how you interact with friends, partners, or colleagues. Does your inner sovereign August push you toward leadership, or does your inner nurturer July urge you to offer support? When you speak, see if you can recognize which archetype is guiding your words. Does your inner alchemist November feel drawn to delve into someone's hidden pain and offer transformative insight? By inviting loved ones to explore this map alongside you, perhaps sharing which archetypal voices you each resonate with, you create a shared language that can deepen empathy and understanding. Fourth, honor the cyclical nature of time by synchronizing personal projects with seasonal energies. In early January, when novelty and reflection reign, set annual intentions rooted in both long-term vision and inner stillness. As spring beckons in March and April, launch creative endeavors or personal transformations you've felt stirring beneath the surface. In mid-year June through August, lean into collaboration, social causes, leadership opportunities, or travels that expand your horizons. In September and October, focus on refining your work, tying up loose ends, and cultivating balance. Then, as November's introspective shadows descend, embrace restorative practices, deep journaling therapy, silent retreats, or rituals of letting go. Finally, in December, gather the fruits of the season. Synthesize what you've learned, celebrate with community, and prepare to plant the seeds for the next year's unfolding. By living in harmony with nature's cycles and with the archetypal energies each month brings, you can find a profound sense of alignment. When life's storms arise, and they will recall that your soul carries the resilience of March's reborn and the steadfastness of January's sage. When opportunities glimmer ahead, summon the vision of February's revolutionary and the resolve of May's builder. And whenever you feel adrift, remember that the wise teacher of December whispers, "Trust the process, another chapter awaits." Jung reminded us that symbols do not dictate our choices, they illuminate possibilities. Your birth month's archetype is not a prison door, but an invitation, an auspicious starting point from which to journey inward. And as you travel, do not discard the others. Each archetype has a lesson to teach you. As you embrace them one by one, you'll find that the tapestry of your life becomes richer, more textured, and more resilient. You become not just the embodiment of a single archetypal note, but the composer of a unique symphony, fully aware of each instrument's role. If this exploration has sparked curiosity in you, I invite you to reflect on how these archetypes resonate or clash with your lived experience. Perhaps you'll share a comment below, describing when you first recognized January's sage energy, or when November's alchemist called you through a season of profound change. If you found value here, consider subscribing so that we can continue journeying together into the depths of symbolism, myth, and inner revelation. As always, I welcome your questions, your stories, and even your doubts, because the dialogic spirit of Jungian inquiry thrives when it is shared. Our stories are never static. We are perpetually in process, weaving past reflections into new visions. By recognizing the archetypal currents that have been flowing since the moment we first breathed, we gain the chance to choose our path consciously rather than stumble unknowingly. In each of us lies the stillness of January, the fire of April, the balance of October, and the hope of December all at once. Step into that wholeness and watch as your life resonates with deeper meaning. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey through the calendar's symbolic landscape. May the archetype of your birth month continue to serve as a living guide, and may you find courage, creativity, and compassion as you integrate each archetype into the unfolding story of your soul.